off-the-field issues. But first, let's talk about Nick Foles and the Eagles. They orchestrated another second-half comeback. At 2-0, they are the first team in the NFL history to win their first 2 games of a season after trailing by at least 14 points in the second half in both games. Foles threw a touchdown to tie the game with 3 minutes left, and then the Eagles ran the clock down to 3 seconds and kicked the game-winning field goal. So last night we watched the game. It was a tale of 2 halves, first half and second half. But Stephen A. will ask you this. Which do you believe were the real Eagles?
To believe it or not, Skip Bayless, I'm of the mindset that the real Eagles are the team that we saw in the second half of both games, the opener against Jacksonville and last night's game. Obviously, they give a little bit too much in a game last night against Indianapolis. Indianapolis shocked them a little bit. They went heavy with the 2 tight end set, running the ball exceptionally well, accumulating over 100 yards on the ground in the first half, which is something that appears to be the antithesis of who they are and what they represent. Trent Richardson and Amar Bradshaw, they're not guys that are considered elusive. They're rough riders. They try to run in between tackles, even though Trent Richardson needs to do that a bit more successfully, with more continuity. But there's no question that when you look at them, you don't see a Shady McCoy. You don't see a Darren Sproles. You don't see an Adrian Peterson. You don't see guys like that on the Indianapolis Colts running the football. Primarily, it's usually about Andrew Luck. But I think they shocked the Philadelphia Eagles a little bit in the first half in that 17-6 lead because they were running the ball effectively. They essentially took the ball out of Andrew Luck's hands because they was running the ball so well because you had your 2 tight end set and the Eagles had to adjust to a heavier, more physical lineup that the Indianapolis Colts threw out there. So they go into halftime. They make the necessary adjustments. They force a turnover in terms of a fumble by Richardson. They force an interception, even though the receiver, Hilton, was held. There's no doubt about that, but you got to find a way to work yourself through that. But in the end, what I watched the Eagles do offensively is something that I think they could do against anybody. Nick Foles hasn't been that impressive, Skip, over the first 2 games of this season. But if you're going to dip and dunk it to a Darren Sproles who's going to accumulate more than about 152 receiving yards, when you've got Shady McCoy, who's the closest thing we've seen to Barry Sanders in quite some times in terms of his elusivity, I don't think there's any question that when you look at those 2 weapons and what they're capable of doing simply by Chip Kelly getting Nick Foles to dip and dunk the ball to one of those 2. Remember, we're not even taking the Riley Coopers, the Jeremy Maclins, the Brent Sellecks, the Zach Ertz into consideration. And Zach Ertz had a couple of good catches. You're talking about Sproles and Shady McCoy being the primary weapons. And when you have those 2 guys so close to the quarterback, Skip, where you can dip or dunk it to one of those individuals, it spreads the field for the receivers because the safeties, the cornerbacks, everybody, the cornerback has to stay at home and cover his receivers. The safeties can't just go deep with the receivers. They got to stay at home to some degree because of what Sproles and Shady McCoy are capable of doing, and it can really be just something that's devastating for a defense to deal with. I think those are the true Philadelphia Eagles, and as a result of that, I think the Eagles are far more formidable in the NFC than I even thought they were. I picked them to win the NFC East, and I've seen nothing to derail that kind of thinking. I think what you've seen in the second half of the last 2 games, those are the Philadelphia Eagles more so than what we've seen in the first half.
By the way, you did watch my Dallas Cowboys yesterday, correct? As I recall, on yesterday's show, you said, "Boy, you're more impressed than you thought you'd be with the Dallas defense." Just a thought.
Yeah, that's because I thought they were garbage.
All right.
Now I realize they're not garbage. That don't make them better than the Eagles.
I'm still not sure what to make of your Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not sure about the quality of the opposition just yet. I'm not sure about the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm still not sure about an Indy defense without a Robert Mathis to rush the passer. So I do have to give you this. I thought they would miss Deshaun Jackson. Darren Sproles, looks like he's about 7 years younger than he was a year ago. Remember, he played in a playoff game at the end of last year at Philly for the New Orleans Saints. Remember that game, Stephen A?
Yes.
And I barely remember it because I don't remember much about him running 4 times for 29 yards and catching 4 passes for 31 yards. Last night, he looked like he was playing on tape that was running in fast motion while everybody else on the field was on tape running at regular speed, normal speed. He was absolutely electric last night, and all of a sudden, we have Foles to Sproles. Foles to Sproles. And I'm sure we're going to hear about that all week because it's like the equivalent, as you know, Stephen A., of little long handoffs, just little quick flips to Darren Sproles, and Chip Kelly puts him in the most advantageous positions in the formation for him to slip free and be gone, man. And he was flying up and down the football field. I thought Indy did a reasonable job on LaShawn last night. He wound up with 20 rushes for 79 yards, but he had one run of 21 yards. So if you do the math on the 19 other carries, he only averaged 3.1. And how many times last night did it seem like LaShawn got thrown for a loss? So good job there, Indy. But you put so much focus and attention on stopping LaShawn McCoy, as you say, the closest thing to Barry Sanders. I'm not sure about that, but I'll leave that be for right now. But all of a sudden, Sproles is just killing you. You're not ready for just how electric Sproles has become, because last week against Jacksonville, he got loose for that 71-yard run for a touchdown that got them going in the second half. So if he keeps that up, he's 31 years of age. This is his 9th year in the league. San Diego finally let him go as a free agent, and New Orleans did finally, because he became an unhappy camper. They traded him for a 5th-round pick to Philadelphia. So is he going to keep up this pace? Because he's the difference maker right now. As you said, Foles is hit and miss. I'm never quite sure what to make of him. He wound up with a QBR of 66.5, which is just a little above average. But still, this little guy, this little mighty might, I mean, that's unstoppability to me. So I'm going to have to give it up to you for right now.
Well, Skip, I think the thing that we have to monitor is that I don't expect him to continue to put up those kind of numbers because I expect teams to respect the legitimate threat that he is and to make the Riley Coopers, the Jeremy Maclins, the Brent Sellecks, the Zach Ertz of the world beat them. What they're going to do is suffocate the line of scrimmage to some degree, or they're going to dare Nick Foles to show you that he can be what he was last year en route to throwing 27 touchdowns and just 2 interceptions. I think it's one of those situations where you look at those guys and you look at the kind of threat that they could pose deep, and you're going to say, I'm going to take my chances against those guys because this guy, Sproles, along with Shady McCoy, are really devastating to us because they move the chains. And what happens is they not only are capable of scoring, but they're capable of eating away at a defense. As opposed to giving up a big play here or there, you've got the defense literally exhausted come the 4th quarter because these dudes are moving the chains first down after first down after first down because of the way they eat up at you. And I think teams are going to sit there and say, well, we've got to pick our poison. We'll take our chances against the Maclins, the Coopers, the Ertz, the Brent Sellecks of the world rather than dealing with Shady McCoy and Darren Sproles.
Okay. So in 2 weeks, they have to go to San Francisco. Then later they go to Arizona. They do have to play at Houston. Houston's no pushover at home this year.
No, they're not.
They do have to go to that little town in sort of north central Texas.
You've been there before?
I used to live there for just a couple of years. And then they got Seattle coming to Philadelphia. So we're going to find out a lot more about Philly going forward. Not sure about the quality of the opposition.
All right. Well, they said after the game, they being LaShawn McCoy said, without Sproles, we couldn't have got it done.
Nope.
It was definitely needed.